Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today, we're taking a focused look at Immunitybio, a company that's certainly getting attention in the immunotherapy space. We've got a fair bit of information you shared, and our goal here is really to pull out the key insights, understand what makes this company tick.
That's right. We have a few different pieces here. An analysis from late April 2025, a due diligence report from around the same time, and also a summary of recent developments as of mid-April. So it gives us a pretty good multifaceted view of where they stand right now.
Okay, so we'll try to unpack their core business, look at recent highlights, including a pretty crucial FDA development, it seems. We'll also touch on their financials, what we can glean there, potential strengths, maybe some red flags too, and market sentiment, competition, and then, wrap up with the future outlook and potential catalysts.
Sounds like a plan. So Immunitybio, fundamentally, they're focused on these next-generation immunotherapies and vaccines. The aim is really to kind of supercharge the body's own immune system to fight cancer and infectious diseases.
Right, using immunotherapy and cell therapy platforms to try and get these lasting immune responses. And a key piece of this seems to be Immunitybio.
Absolutely. Immunitybio is, well, it's the first FDA-approved immunotherapy for a specific type of bladder cancer, the non-muscle invasive kind, carcinoma in situ, or CIS. And what's interesting is how it works. It activates natural killer cells, T cells and memory T cells all at once.
That simultaneous activation, that sounds potentially quite powerful compared to therapies hitting just one target.
It could be. The idea is it might lead to a more durable response. And they're also developing recombinant BCG therapies.
Ah, yes, that caught my eye too. To address the shortages of the traditional BCG used for bladder cancer.
Precisely. It shows a kind of vertical integration, trying to control their supply chain, which is, well, noteworthy.
It definitely seems like a strategic move. Okay, what about recent performance? The documents don't detail the stock price itself much recently, but there are operational points.
Yes, several milestones suggest things are moving in a positive direction. Probably the most significant recently was back in January 2025, Immunitybio got its permanent J-code J9028.
Okay, you flagged that earlier. Why is that J-code such a big deal?
Well, the J-code is crucial for reimbursement. It's the billing code Medicare and other insurers use for physician-administered drugs. Having that permanent color just makes it so much easier for hospitals and clinics to get paid when they use Immunitybio. It removes a major administrative hurdle.
And it looks like the impact was pretty immediate.
Seems so. The numbers suggest February unit sales volume jumped something like 97% compared to before. And get this, the combined sales for January and February actually topped the entire revenue from Q4 2024.
Wow. Okay, that really underscores the importance of that J-code. That's a significant uptick.
It really is. Then, fast forward to April 8th, they announced a $75 million equity financing.
Right, which, suggests they need capital to fuel growth. Pretty standard for a biotech at this stage, right?
Yeah.
Especially launching a product, funding R&D.
Standard, yes, but it always raises the question of cash burn versus strategic investment. Likely a mix of both as they scale up. Then, April 15th was a busy day for them. They had an investor day.
What came out of that?
Updates across the board, really. Clinical programs, not just bladder cancer, but also non-small cell lung cancer, metastatic pancreatic cancer, some data on lymphopenia rescue too, and of course, updates on the Immunitybio commercial launch.
And that same day, April 15th, they also announced FDA submissions. One for expanding Immunitybio's use in non-IBC papillary disease.
And another for expanded access to treat lymphopenia, so trying to broaden its application.
So that's a supplemental BLA, a biologics license application, basically asking the FDA to approve it for more uses than the original one. What are the typical challenges there?
Well, it's still a rigorous FDA review. They need solid clinical data showing safety and efficacy for that new proposed use. There's always the risk of questions, requests for more data, which can mean delays. It's never a guaranteed green light.
Got it. Also noted, they resolved a class action lawsuit regarding their securities. That removes an overhang, I suppose.
Usually does, yeah. Clears up some uncertainty. And maybe partly reflecting all this, the stock was up nearly 9% around April 14th. Seems like the market was reacting positively to the trial news in these developments.
Makes sense. Okay, let's pivot to the financials. What do we know about their health?
Well, we saw that Q4 2024 net product revenue hit about $7.2 million. That was up around 21% from Q3's $6 million. So that positive trend after the J-code seems clear.
Okay, that sequential growth is good. What about profitability?
Specific full-year 2024 figures weren't in these summaries, but Q4 2024 EPS did improve. It was -9 cents versus an estimate of -26 cents. However, looking ahead, the consensus forecast for FY 2025 EPS is still negative, around -64 cents, so losses are still expected for now.
Which circles back to that $75 million equity financing we mentioned. Underscores the ongoing need for capital during this heavy investment phase, R&D commercialization.
Exactly, and these documents didn't specifically mention debt, so it looks like they're primarily relying on equity financing at this point.
Makes sense for their stage.
We also see operating cash flow in the latest period was negative $85.17 million, but that was offset by financing activities bringing in about $107 million. And the valuation metrics are interesting. Price to sales ratio is very high, 152 times. Enterprise value around $5.27 billion.
Whoa, 152 times sales.
Yeah.
That's pricing in a lot of future growth, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It tells you investors are paying a hefty premium based on the belief that sales will ramp up dramatically. It's a sign of high expectations and, potential risk if that growth doesn't fully materialize.
Right. Okay, let's talk strengths and weaknesses. On the plus side, that FDA breakthrough therapy designation for Anktiva has to be a major strength. Gives it credibility.
It definitely does. It signals the FDA sees potential for substantial improvement over existing therapies. And the permanent J-code, as we've hammered home, is huge for commercial prospects.
And their work on the recombinant BCG, addressing those supply shortages. That seems like a real strength, too, showing they can respond to market needs. Is recombinant BCG fundamentally different from the traditional kind?
It can be. Traditional BCG is a live, weakened bacterium. Recombinant versions are engineered, potentially offering more consistent manufacturing, maybe different side effect profiles, though that needs to be proven out clinically. But addressing the supply issue is the key immediate benefit.
Okay. Now, the flip side. Red flags or weaknesses.
Well, the usual suspects for a biotech at this stage. Limited profitability data, the expectation of ongoing losses because R&D is expensive. That's just part of the model.
And the big one. Future success hinges heavily on regulatory approvals. There's always the risk of delays or even denials down the line.
Always. That regulatory pathway is paramount. So how's the market feeling about them overall? Sentiment seems positive lately.
It appears so. The J-code, the sales jump after that, the capital raise, it all seems to be feeding positive sentiment. You also mentioned analyst commentary and press releases sounded pretty optimistic about those upcoming FDA submissions.
Yes, the narrative seems favorable right now, but what about the competition? It's a crowded field.
For sure. Immuno-oncology is packed. You've got the huge players, Merck with Keytruda, Bristol-Myers Squibb with Opdivo. Those are blockbusters.
Right, the checkpoint inhibitors. How does Immunitybio's approach, activating NK cells and others with Anktiva, really differ from what Keytruda or Opdivo do? Are they aiming for different patient groups or stages?
That's a good question. Keytruda and Opdivo primarily work by taking the brakes off existing T cells, right? Unleashing them. Whereas Anktiva seems designed to more broadly stimulate multiple immune cell types, including those NK cells.
So a different mechanism. That could potentially make it useful maybe in patients who don't respond to checkpoint inhibitors or perhaps in combination.
That seems to be the hope, finding where this unique mechanism offers the biggest advantage. They are exploring different cancer types.
So they're carving out their niche, but yeah, it's against some very big, well-resourced competitors.
Definitely. So looking ahead, what are the key potential catalysts we should watch?
Those supplemental BLA submissions this year are top of the list. If they get approved, that expands Ankitiva's market significantly. Also, the continued rollout of that recombinant BCG under expanded access could start adding more revenue through the rest of fiscal 25.
Makes sense. And the risks to keep in mind.
Regulatory hurdles, number one. Delays or rejections on those SBLAs would be a setback. Competition, as we just discussed. The big players aren't standing still. They're constantly innovating, too. That impacts pricing, market share, and just general market conditions, Biotech can be volatile. Investor confidence waxes and wanes.
Okay, so wrapping this up. Immunitybio. It's definitely an interesting story. Innovation in immunotherapy, the NKTVA approval, and that early commercial traction post-J-code are significant wins. Getting the J-code sorted, addressing the BCG need. They've navigated some key challenges.
Agreed. But like any biotech at this stage, the risks are real. Future approvals are not guaranteed, and that path to profitability is still unfolding. The recent stock performance reflects optimism, sure, but you have to keep a sharp eye on those upcoming FDA decisions and how they stack up against competitors.
And it really is fascinating to think about how that specific focus on NK cell activation might differentiate them long-term in this really dynamic immunotherapy landscape. It's a company with a lot going on, definitely. Staying updated on their clinical results and regulatory news seems crucial if you're following the space. As always, we encourage you to do your own further research, see what aspects of the Immunitybio story stand out to you. Please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. Let us know what other companies or topics you'd like us to explore next time.